When I started, I think it was this guy over here in the red and white hat, Marcus and Rusty. I don't know if Steinmetz was in the mix at that time. He might have been moved on. It wasn't this.
Now, back to Steiny and Guru on 95.7 The Game.
All righty, this is The Crossover, brought to you by California Academy of Sciences. Every visit supports the Academy's mission to regenerate the natural world. Learn more and reserve your ticket at calacademy.org. I'm going to call this like a soft relaunch of The Crossover.
Yeah.
We haven't been together in a little while.
5 days, 6 days?
Yeah, what's...
We should start by congratulating you. Have you called Bonte to take away his King of Bay Area Sports Media trophy?
Why?
Because you got
He
named,
don't like that trophy.
You got named in the Bob Myers press conference?
He got kind of dissed is what happened.
Yeah. No, I didn't take it. Did you take it that way?
Well, do you want to play the actual cut?
He just
Evans
did.
got it.
He just played it. Your headset wasn't on yet. He just played it.
When I started, I think it was this guy over here in the red and white hat, Marcus and Rusty. I don't know if Steinmetz was in the mix at that time. He might have been moved on. It wasn't
might
this.
have been moved on.
He might have been moved on.
He's talking about all
He
the-
might have moved
Yeah,
on.
correct.
He might have been moved on.
Where did he
Bob
go,
Myers.
Dibs?
Bob Myers might have just been moved on. We don't really know, do we?
Well, I don't
no,
remember.
that was his
I don't remember the
choice.
Steiny press conference, but the fact that Bob name checked him and said he might have been moved
That's
on.
great.
Well, listen.
You know what that is? That's called a Roger Federer. It's a backhanded compliment, up the line, 15 love.
I thought to myself, Bob was being retrospective, and he was calling out the people who were
That's
there
great.
before it was cool to be
Wow.
there.
No, that's
it's-
what he was doing.
Now
I
it's
think
cool
that's-
to be here.
Yeah.
Now
The
it's
new
cool to be
booty
here.
is out,
That's
yeah.
right.
No love
that's
for
it.
Janie Who, unfortunately. Janie Who wasn't there as long as you, but she was. Rusty Simmons got a shout out.
Rusty?
Yeah.
Great guy.
Yeah, great guy. Yeah, no doubt.
What stuck out? Because the thing that stuck out to me was I didn't think he was leaving. And I don't get why.
Yeah. Well, that stuck out. And we were just talking about this in the other room. I feel like the whole thing took a night of sleep for me to really understand what stuck out. What, we started right as it was wrapping.
Yeah, I was listening.
Yesterday. And so it was like all this stuff to work through and kind of figure out what do you think about what Bob said, what Joe said, the obvious awkwardness of certain interactions. And I don't know, I woke up today and I'm like, I really want to buy this at face value.
When you say this,
God, I want to buy this.
when you say this, not yet just the whole him being gone.
I want to buy.
It wasn't about money.
I want to buy that the Warriors were just like, Bob, here's a blank check, and Bob's like, I love my 4-year-old, so I'm leaving. I want to buy it. I don't. I can't.
Well, you can buy that if you want, but an even better way to describe it is I'm sick and tired of having this guy blow me up 20 times a day and tell me what I'm either doing or not doing right. I've got 4 championships. I've made enough money. And yeah, I love my kids and I love my family. And maybe after a year, I'll want to do this again somewhere else. But working for a person like that is exhausting.
Okay.
And Joe Lacob wants to win. Joe Lacob will win. Yeah. He doesn't give a damn about the CBA or any of the other rules. He will win.
Yeah, that didn't. It's so funny because fans love that. You eat that with a spoon if you're a fan. But pull that apart.
I didn't.
Yeah, me neither.
And I've been eating.
Because pull it apart and everything in there, everything from I just found out this morning. Well, no, you didn't just find out this morning.
Why say it though?
Because I don't think he believed it until yesterday morning. Because he's that arrogant.
Okay, and that's
why he looked at him and said, "I don't understand why,
Mark,
you're leaving." Yeah. And then we're gonna win no matter what. Like, I just would love to back up for a second and go, "Okay, Joe, you're great. You're legitimately great with what you've achieved. Yeah. You're one of the best owners in sports. This is inarguable.
Go ahead.
What you've built is you realize that you win because of Steph Curry, not you.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think that's what road we're on, Mark.
Does he get that?
Yeah, he gets that. But everything you just gave him and threw at his feet, I would do it 2 times over. But yesterday he did. A guy of his caliber did not read the Bob Myers room. And it was for all of us to hear and listen to. And then for poor Bob to say, my boss never gives me any compliments. This is like you could laugh that off, but that was telling to me. But Dibs, you said the word. He's exhausted,
right?
And I don't think today Joe Lacob has enough self-reflection because he is a Don to say maybe I'm part of the reason that this guy wanted to move on because I'm exhausting to work for.
Bob Myers,
and that was shocking.
He couldn't even have his own farewell press conference without having the boss come in 2/3 of the way through and set the record straight.
I thought he was joking.
Do whatever Joe was going to do. And I mentioned to Mark yesterday about it was like Chris Collinsworth on Sunday Night Football where all of a sudden he appeared. It's like, oh my God, Joe's here.
Seriously.
He came out of nowhere.
When did you walk in?
Because the chair was empty for a while. I was starting, why is the chair empty?
Right. And the chair was no longer empty when Joe decided, okay, it's my time to answer the questions that I can answer. And by the way, he didn't give any clarity on what is to come.
Right.
So the only reason why Joe was there was to express to Bob and everyone that he didn't understand why Bob was leaving.
You're the king of material. Yeah. And if this were Joe Lacob material, guys, you tell me what you think. But I told Steiny, I mean this. The whole June 30th thing, that didn't. Man, who are you, Guru? You could say it was material, but it was almost insight to. You're going to work to the end. I'm going to run you in the ground. Like, you didn't. Dibs, bad material, good material. I felt like
bad
that was
material.
telling.
And you could see Bob's face kind of, and Bob kind of goes, oh,
I'm so tired of this.
Well, then he looked at his wife and shrugged.
Exactly.
As if she hasn't dealt with that a million times.
And what you didn't see on
last
camera is she
12 years.
actually pulls out his pay stub and looks to see how many sick days he has left.
Exactly.
And goes, we're good, honey. We're good. You got 28 sick days left. We're going to go ahead and sick this thing out.
Odd.
There were a few things. There were a few things. I'm interested to see who gets hired. I have come around a little bit to your way of thinking about Dunleavy. I'm starting to think it matters less what happened here 20 years ago. A lot of the fans are young.
I heard you say about the young fans, and even go back to what we were just joking about a second ago when he says, Rusty and Steinmetz were here before it was cool. Well, now it's cool, and that tells you something. Like Warrior fans, I know that Oracle's was always loud, but there are also a lot of people who just got here over the last decade. Globally, there are a lot of people who are here now who weren't here for World Be Free.
Okay,
right. So it is different now, and it's a totally different role and a totally different generation. And yeah, there are some fans that might be bothered by the name Mike Dunleavy Jr. They'll get over it if he does a good job.
Now, I got a quick question for you because in the streets, when I was with my boys and we got kids and we're married, there's a card you can play. And it's, I got to go tend to the kids and the family. And as much as I don't want Dibs to leave me and we're hanging, once you use that, there's no rebuttal. So I'm asking you, Willard, are you kind of doing that to when you say you don't buy what you saw yesterday and the reasoning behind Bob leaving? Because I feel like the reasoning is, I won't say it ain't your kids, but now, after watching yesterday, that dude is taxing to work.
Well, sure.
And you're tired.
Yes, if you're exhausted, that's fine. It just means you're exhausted. And yes, I'm sure. Listen, I think Bob, from everything I know about him and everything I've heard even more, I think he is as family-oriented as people come. So I'm sure he has missed things he didn't want to miss. I'm sure he's looking forward to being in things for the first time. That's all true. But you don't leave at 48 years old with $12 million on the table to solely to be with your family. I just don't
12 M's.
I don't know how many, right? Like, we've seen this before, and they're sitting there admitting in front of everyone yesterday. Joe said it and Bob said it. You're not done working. So he's not retiring. He's not leaving to be with his family. He's just taking a break. He's taking a break, and he's taking a break, it felt like to many of us, from that man.
To me, the truth comes in how quickly you get your next job. Because Tom Brady, I want to go spend time with the family. 8 weeks later, he's out of retirement.
8 days.
Yeah, whatever it was.
Michael Jordan did the baseball.
That at least was a year. And then, Michael Jordan was gone for a year and change. Actually, he didn't come back until the spring of the following year.
Gotcha.
Because Houston goes back to back. He missed a year. Houston won it. He came back in February. Houston won it again. And then he got his second three-peat. So if Bob spends a year away from it, you could at least justify it by saying, all right, he wanted to spend time with his family. And then maybe he got tired of driving carpool and now he's back.
I told Steiny I'm a bit nervous now because I was reading the Guru I went third person, tea leaves that this was about getting his son the job. And that's fine because I always talked about you want to leave something for your kids. He's already in the organization. But watching that and hearing that yesterday, they're scrambling right now because that's Steve Young. They're scrambling now to feel that. Like, I don't believe that was it. Dibs to give it to his son. Joe's really like, this dude really left me. He left this.
But do you think they're scrambling? Because again, I think
Who do you
exactly.
give it to then?
Dunleavy.
But why? And I'm not saying he's not worthy.
And in fact,
why are we saying
if you want to give it to your son, you definitely give it to Dunleavy first. You don't let your son follow the most successful GM in league history or Warriors history. Yeah. You don't do that because that sets him up for failure.
No doubt.
You put someone else in there and let your son follow him.
That makes sense.
Yeah, but if I own the team, son, you're in good hands like Allstate.
Sure.
Regardless of
what we
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just,
Yeah.
I mean, I'd be surprised if it's somebody from outside the organization.
I would too.
To me, there's too many people inside, whether it's the two Lacob kids, Joe Lacob, Larry Harris, Dunleavy, Kerr. It just would feel weird if, I don't know, Messiah Hurry has been hired by the Golden State.
Dibs, I threw out Mullen. I like Mullins. He played. I'm just
right.
When you hear that, you say what?
You say, why would he want that job? Because basically the job of GM and president of basketball ops is to oversee the end of the era. There's no two ways about it.
Wow.
You're not, even if you want to give Steph Curry 2 years on top of the 3 he has, so now he's there till he's 41.
Oh, man.
What do you do about Clay? Does Draymond stay? Steve's got 1 year. This thing is ending. It may not be ending now. It may be 2 more years, 3 more years, whatever it is, but whoever the new GM is, it's going to end in your tenure, and it's not going to end pretty.
Wow.
You're listening to 95.7 The Game, KGMZ FM and HD1 San Francisco and Odyssey Station. Like I said, it's a soft relaunch.
Where are you playing?
Carica. It's a Carica Park.
Carica.
Have you ever played there?
Once. I loved it.
Since the remodel.
Yeah. Well, how long ago was that now?
Probably within 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, it was since then. Yeah. I never really played it
before.
before the remodel, though, so it wasn't like everyone's like, oh, it's been remodeled. I'm like, well, this is the only way I know it.
It was
I never
big
played
upgrade.
it, but yeah.
Big upgrade.
Yeah.
Dibs can tell you more about it.
Yeah. Make sure, isn't that short par 5 to start? Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's just like you, Dibs. You can remember every
Yeah,
hole.
well done. You
got to get off to a good start.
Gotta
It's
keep it
wide
left,
open and
exactly.
it's short.
Yep.
Exactly.
You better par it. You should birdie it, but you better par it. Don't put a 6 on the card.
I shot my best round in a while, 85. And this guy shoots an 84 the same day.
I know.
You guys shot
Hopefully
together?
But what was
We were in 2 separate floors.
what were the course ratings?
Well, you did play
does an
together.
80
Fairly
sometimes
easy.
an 84
Fairly
equals
easy.
an 88, you know.
We'll see you later, Steiny.
Yeah,
I'm just saying.
probably an 86.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, good.
I'm still here.
No, you don't go anywhere.
I missed y'all yesterday.
Unless you want to.
No.
All right, you talk. I'm going to switch spots.
No
Okay.
haircut, right? You good on the haircut?
Yeah, good on the haircut.
Okay, yeah.
You said something to me about the title of the gig.
Yeah,
like
the title of the
It takes
jam.
2 to tango. Who would want that? But if you want a job, you're taking. A lot of people. People want to get hired. Oh, they don't want to go coach the
Right.
Texans.
So
people want to get into.
But if
the
you're
clique.
Steve Kerr, and I actually asked Steve Kerr when we had him on last time, I said, "Hey, Steve, if
brought that
Bob
up.
leaves, what do you think about maybe going upstairs and being the GM instead of coaching?" And he said, "I'm a coach, and I'm always going to be a coach." Basically, was the essence of the answer, which told me all I need to know. And if you are Kirk Lacob, and I agree with Mark, and we've talked about
I guarded him in the tournament.
Yeah, he's a good, smart, nice young man, and he's been around the association now quietly for 10 or 12 or however long it's been. But you don't want to follow Bob Myers, and his dad doesn't want to throw him to the wolves. So you give it to Mike Dunleavy, and you say, all right, Mike, you've got a 4-year deal. You can work it out, figure out what you can figure out with our roster, and we'll see how it goes from there.
Wow.
I mean, how didn't Joe look relaxed to you? Like he doesn't look like he's scrambling to me at all. The draft.
Well, he's a billionaire,
right?
So
But the draft is in a few weeks.
Right.
I think the Warriors are very, very well aware of their inner structure.
And that's what if I not to
who
catch
the
up?
GM
That's
is.
the least of their problems. And I'm not saying you're saying we know the draft's important. It is the least. You got personality issues.
Well, that's all roster construction,
yeah.
though. So the draft may be the least of their worries, but roster construction is not.
And what do you two give me for this? Because I'm all over now. I just walked away from that thing, and now I'm worried about Kerr in a way of Dibs. You just talked to. Does he want to do the Bob Myers thing like Deuces, Chris Brown, like not in a bad way, just like we've done it all. It's time for a relaunch. Maybe he's tired. Does he want to stick around for this? Because this is heavy.
It depends what this is. And now that Bob is gone, that's strike one as far as Steve Kerr wanting to be here. If Draymond Green decides now
it could be two.
that, hey, I want to go be a Laker, that's strike two. And then maybe the new GM and Joe Lacob looks at Klay Thompson and says, geez, $42 million for Klay. I want to give Klay 20 for 2 more years after that. And Klay's like, no, I'll test myself on the open market. And so now Klay is into a walk year. Then maybe Steve is like, well, at the end of this next year, no Bob, no Draymond, and Klay's going to leave. It's going to be me and Steph and a bunch of these young pups. Maybe at that point he's out too.
Wow. I mean, he said that he wants to. He said that he wants to keep doing this, but as Bob just proved to us, they're not going to tell us that they're ready to leave until they're ready to leave. And I'll remind everybody what the word was that Steve Kerr used months ago when he was asked what it would feel like if Bob left. And the word he used was devastating.
Man.
He said it would be devastating.
How heavy is that word? Devastating.
If Bob Myers leaves the organization, it would be devastating. That's the word he used. Well, here we are. So I imagine that Steve Kerr right now is devastated.
Along with who you just mentioned, Draymond Green.
Right. I would imagine neither one of them found out yesterday morning.
I would imagine they found out in 2022, to be honest.
And I'll tell you this, Dibs, not been around the block, but for the new person taking over, if you're going to go the route of I'm going to give you some uncomfortable answers and I'm about to tell you, Klay, you ain't getting the max, this is kind of easy in a sense of like there's no emotion involved from the new person's side to where I can give bad news to anybody who want it. I'm cleaning house in a sense almost.
Well, and I feel bad for whoever the new person is going to be because decisions like that are not being made by Mike Dunleavy Jr. or Kirk Lacob or whoever else comes in to be the GM. It's Joe Lacob. So, hey, Joe, why don't you just give yourself the job? You be the GM.
Jerry Jones.
You be the president of basketball operations. Well, Mark, let's just cut out the BS because you're making these calls anyway. Who's making the call on Klay Thompson? It's Joe Lacob.
Well, from a financial perspective, sure, it always is Joe.
Who's making the call on Draymond Green? Whether or not that he gets an offer that he can't refuse. It's Joe Lacob.
Well, I mean, Bob sort of, I didn't hear anybody talk about this yesterday. I know it was just a quip. It was just a fun moment. But when he says, whoever the next GM is, I'll be around to help him with Draymond.
I did.
Like, the Warriors clearly believe that Draymond Green is going nowhere. They clearly, at every step.
So who is making that deal? Who's making that decision? Is it Bob on his way out the door?
I imagine it's already down the road.
Now, when you say
the
that,
whole group,
but it's probably Joe Lacob, to my point.
Right,
it's a Joe Lacob decision.
Well, it has to be signed off.
He's the owner.
It has to be signed off by Joe. But I don't think he's the one who's sitting in the room with Draymond having a conversation with his agent. I don't think that.
No, but I think that the conversation is on speaker and Joe Lacob is listening. And what I got yesterday and we talk about our takeaways and we'll get into the whole Joe Lacob angle. The sense I got was that Joe Lacob is involved in everything and he will be involved in everything from here on out. And that's a big reason why Bob, in my opinion, wants out because Joe Lacob, he says he calls him, between 5 and 20 times a day?
Yeah, that's
the report. I mean, that's a lot.
Wouldn't you love to ask Bob, was that an exaggeration sensation? Was that an exaggeration?
But it was on his face, man.
Hold on. Did you actually call him 11 times a day?
Some bosses do that, though. You know, and nobody dares say, hey, boss, you're calling me too much. You know, especially when you're getting paid handsomely.
I hope that was a bit of an exaggeration.
But look at if he was looking at his wife when he said you're going to work to June 30th, dude, you don't got to be Dr. Phil to know that the look on Bob's face and his kind of laugh was kind of like, I'm in the grinder of GM job. This ain't easy. And he loves Joe, but I'm tired. I'm tired.
Y'all ever see that movie, Devil Wears Prada?
Yeah.
With Meryl Streep and Anne Hathaway.
Yeah.
Because out of yesterday, Joe Lacob feels like the same kind of boss that Meryl Streep was in that movie.
Right.
And how does the movie end? With Anne Hathaway, finally, the phone rings for the 20th time today.
Okay.
She looks at it, she throws it in the water, and walks off, and that's it. She starts her own career because she's had it with the phone ringing 20 times a day and being told what to do by type A+. Wow. Maybe that's what yesterday was. He threw the phone in the water. Before he could do it, Joe told him he still got 30 more days of employment.
Yeah.
And that's why he shrugged his shoulders and looked at his wife.
And, I do wish I could be a fly on the wall or flies, because when you look at the breadcrumbs of the two timelines, which I think Steiny could have been the inventor of if he's listening, but Bob Myers talked about it, how you got Kerr, Lacob, and Myers, and you go Moody, Wiseman, and who am I missing? Kuminga, and then some of them don't get played. You can't tell me there wasn't friction. And Joe Lacob went on Tim Kawakami's podcast and was the biggest James Wiseman advocate. I don't know what he heard the noise. He disagreed with it. But now a year later, you trade him. I'm wondering what Joe, they're not on, I believe, all on the same page. And I wonder how much of that friction went into Bob's decision to be like, you know what, I'm out.
I think a lot of it. And if I am going to play, the third party, psychic here in the whole situation, Joe Lacob said, we're drafting James Wiseman, and Bob Myers is saying, he's not ready. I don't want to draft him. We're drafting him. I own this team.
I believe that.
Boom, you draft him. And now we're going to play him. And so you play him. And
start him.
In the first year. And he plays, and it's up and down. Then he gets hurt. And then the whole second year, he doesn't play a minute, and you win the chip. And then the third year, Joe Lacob rolls up his sleeves and says, all right, time to play my guy. My guy's going to play now. And Bob and Steve are rolling their eyes saying, the kid's still not ready. It was a mistake when we took him. And then you play him.
Oh, wow.
And then he proves himself to still not be ready. And they finally go to Joe and say, look, Joe, if you want to win a championship, and we know you do, he's got to go. And finally, Joe relents after, I'm sure, much hand-wringing and much back and forth, many phone calls.
I mean, it all ends up in the same spot, doesn't it? Everything comes back to zero in the end, which is the chasm between old guys, young guys, who's ready and who can you win with. And that's one thing that I came out of yesterday feeling concerned about.
But those are visions, Mark.
That's
great.
Whose? I don't know whose. Joe's?
He's the owner. I would think he gets final say.
Well, yeah, he gets final say, but listen, being a self-made billionaire means that you have already executed once on something that is wildly impossible. You sit around the dinner table and you're 9 years old.
He said it. He told the venture capitalist story yesterday.
Right? Mom's feeding you ramen, and you're like, I'm going to be a billionaire one day and own the Warriors. You get a pat on the head. That's nice, sweet Joey. Great. Good for you. Right? And you're like, whatever. Well, I feel sort of the same way. Maybe I'm the one who's wrong. Maybe he's right. Maybe he's going to do it again. But when he tells me come hell or high water, because of the organizational structure, we're winning in 5 years. Really? That's the most arrogant thing I've ever heard someone say in my life. It's almost dismissive of the great Steph Curry. You're winning in the NBA? With who? Wow. You think you can win with anyone? Give me Wiseman. Give me Poole. Give me Kuminga. Sure. Because organizational structure, don't the Spurs have good organizational structure? They're the worst team in the NBA this year.
And what if I told you, Mark,
you got to be real.
Yeah, the fact that he said that, I kind of took that for lack of confidence. Show us. You ain't got to tell us.
He's already shown you.
And now you got a glacier of the icebergs of bad stuff that you got to navigate with new haterade the plans put in place aimed at your organization.
And this to me feels like the first time that Joe Lacob now is in the crosshairs. Because you had Bob Myers, and Bob Myers, the pros and the cons, the wins and the losses was all Bob Myers. But now, no matter who comes in and replaces him, this is now Joe Lacob. Because Bob was here, I believe, before Joe, at least as a assistant, or he was brought in about the same time. And so now whatever Joe does in terms of replacing Bob, this one's on Joe now.
Well, it's not the first time he's in the crosshairs because, come on, people. He's been in the crosshairs before.
But that wasn't.
Sure.
He
Obviously,
was a virgin then.
Totally.
It was just you were the wrong place at the wrong time.
We talked about this yesterday. One of the reasons it's so hard to keep a rock band or a dynasty or whatever together is because once you have success, now all of you are different people than who you were 10 years ago.
But now this
Joe,
is the band manager. This ain't.
But he is too. 10 to 15 years ago, he was, come on, people. Boo! Now he's the greatest owner in the history of the Bay.